Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more slug testing. And I've got another new load out here today that I'm really interested to see what it can do and if my setup actually likes it or not, because it's been one pretty picky setup so far. So for the shell I've got out here today, I picked up some of these, the Federal Premium Trophy Copper tipped Sabot slugs. And these are a 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 300 grain slug going about 1900 feet per second, so they say. And here's what those rounds look like, just your pretty typical 2 3/4 shell here. But as you might be able to see there's that tipped grayish kind of rubbery tip on there, and maybe you can see the copper round down in there. So hopefully we might be able to see some good results out of those today. But as for the setup, it's been a very picky one so far, but that is my Remington 870 Magnum Special Purpose with the fully rifled 18.5 inch cantilever barrel on it, and on top is just a loopholed VX1 2-7x28. So I'm hoping that we can see some good results through this today, because it may really like those or it may really hate those at the same time. But as for the test, it's going to be the same as usual. We're going to shoot a 3-shot group at 50 yards and then another 3-shot group at 100 yards. I do also have my chronograph, so we'll be able to see how close it is to the 1900 that's on the box. I doubt we're going to see it out of that short of a barrel, but you never know. And then of course, once we shoot our groups, we'll take a look at what kind of chrono numbers we had. And then I do have my calipers out here as well to measure our groups and see how accurate it was. So let's head over here and get set up. We'll start with the 50-yard target, and then we'll move it out to 100 yards and shoot our second group there. Even though it is pretty cool out here today, I will let the gun cool down for a few minutes in between the 50 and 100-yard group. So heat shouldn't really be a factor today. But let's go over here, get set up, and start shooting and see what these things might actually be able to give us. Alright, so now let's take a look at our chronograph numbers here real quick and see what we got as far as speed. We definitely did not see the 1900 that was on the box, which doesn't surprise me, seeing as though we only have an 18.5 inch barrel. Now we did see one of those shots, I believe it was the first one, that was down in the 900 feet per second range. Most likely the chronograph was probably reading the Sabot on that one, because I think that between like 1200 and 1300 ish range that we were seeing for the rest of the shots was the actual projectile speed. But let's go through the numbers here regardless and see what it gave us. So for a high, it gave us 1364. For a low, it gave us that 990. But that gave us an average of 1232. So I'll throw the numbers up on the screen now for that 1232 average here so you guys can see it. But then I'll go average without that 900 and something feet per second one, which I think would give us a little bit closer to a real deal average. It's not going to make much of a difference, but either way, I'll calculate both here and put them on the screen for you. But at the end of the day, we did not see that 1900, which doesn't surprise me for what this setup is. But how accurate were they? Let's take a look and see. And real quick here, we'll take a quick look at the Sabot out of those. They all opened up completely pretty much flat like this, which is definitely something pretty unique to see here. But we did have good rifle engagement almost 3/4 of the way up the side of the Sabot here. So I think they did what they were supposed to do. And I also found a few of these little silver chrome disc things that I believe they were probably stuck in the bottom there. As you can see, they have a peg that might go in that little hole. Some kind of a little gas check piece or seal piece or something, I'm sure. But definitely something pretty interesting that I haven't seen in any of the other Sabot loads that I've tested. Okay, so let's take a look here at our actual targets and see what kind of accuracy we got. We'll start off with our 50-yard group, which is the one up there at the top. Now, I'll mention really quick that this little bullet hole right up here, it's not actually destabilized or sideways or 2 bullet holes or anything like that. We just had a previous old shot right there. So in fact, I'll get a black sticker and put it over that just so it cleans up this target just a little bit for us. Okay, now that's a little bit better. We can a little bit more cleanly see what we're working with. And before we even measure it, I definitely do not think it is the best load that we have found for this shotgun. It's not what I would call terrible necessarily. It would get the job done, but definitely nowhere near the best that we've seen. But let's measure it anyway and see. We'll start off with that 50-yard group up at the top and see what that gave us. Okay, so that 50-yard group up at the top gave us a 2.26 inch group. So definitely nothing very impressive as far as our 50-yard group goes. It would be good enough to get the job done, and maybe one of those shots might have been cold bore related or something, I don't know. But either way, I still count cold bore shots, so that's the kind of group that we got. So now let's move out to our 100-yard group, which is the bottom target there, and see what it gave us there. It's definitely a little bit worse, but it's not quite as bad as what I thought it might open up to. So let's measure it and see what it actually gave us. Okay, so that 100-yard group gave us a 3.05 inch group. Definitely a little bit more open than the top group, not by a lot, but definitely a little bit. And once again, it's not the worst we've seen by a long shot, but it's far from the best we've seen as well. 3 inches at 100 yards is good enough to get the job done on a deer or something like that, but I definitely like to see a little bit better. So overall here, I'm calling this combination kind of in the middle. It's not terrible, it's not great. I would say it's about average for what I've been able to get out of that setup. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about this setup here? It's definitely not the worst we've seen. It's far from the best we've seen at the same time though. It's about what I would call average for what I've seen so far out of this particular gun. 3 inches at 100 yards, good enough on a deer, but I definitely prefer to see a little bit better than that, personally. So at the end of the day, what do you guys think about it? Is that good enough? Would you like to have seen better? And if you've tested some of these trophy coppers, what has been your experience with them as far as accuracy goes and stuff like that? Leave a comment and let me know all of your thoughts and opinions and experiences with them. But with that being said, we do have an Instagram now as well, where you can go over there and see some sneak peeks and stuff from time to time. If you're interested, I'll leave it in the description for you. But on that note, I'm going to get back to all the testing, so I'll see y'all in the next one.